He had a gun, so we tried to wrestle him.
He's not like
I just want to go home.
Nobody, nothing, just not even apologize because you can't even get her back. I'm so angry.
A man accused in a Westchester shooting that left a woman injured may not be to blame after all. A judge ruled that all charges against Courtney Montgomery be dismissed after new evidence was uncovered. Through his attorney, Montgomery claims that he was the victim in the situation, allegedly lured and attacked by two women. Tears were shed in Butler County's court, and Montgomery's head dropped as the decision was announced.
Because I didn't want none of this.
I know.
I didn't ask for none of this.
I understand.
I didn't ask for this.
Courtney Montgomery has also been cleared of robbery and assault charges. However, the events that took place inside the Westchester apartment continue to leave emotional scars.
It's just the opposite of what was portrayed by the police department and what was portrayed by the media.
A 911 call initially led police to believe that someone had broken into the apartment, robbed two women, and shot one of them in front of her daughter.
I'm sorry, so did you see it happen?
Yes, he came in. That seems he came into the wrong building. He had a gun, so we tried to wrestle him.
Hours later, police arrested Montgomery.
That could not have been done with many things without the dedication of the men and women standing behind you here.
Well, Chief Joe, the evidence was unclear, leading investigators to suspect a man with no criminal history who hired lawyer Clyde Bennett.
He's very upset. He's nervous. He's scared. He understands his peril. He's looking at decades in prison for something that he did not do.
Bennett blames Montgomery's accusers, asserting that the women lured him with text messages suggesting a romantic encounter and then attempted to rob him at gunpoint.
Unbeknownst to them, I should say, he had a gun, and he used that gun to defend himself after they were robbing him with a gun. And he shot one of them in order to defend himself.
Prosecutors determined they had heard enough to drop the charges against Montgomery. The police noted in a statement that this decision was made in the interest of justice, but they are not closing the case. Investigators are committed to finding the truth and plan to hold someone accountable. Prosecutors in Butler County intend to present evidence to grand juries, suggesting that the two women who accused Montgomery may also face legal consequences. Cameras captured the emotional moment when a mother and father saw their daughter's accused killers for the first time. Both men are currently in jail, charged with the murder of high school cheerleader Terry Rawls. Her parents were present as the men made their first court appearance. The courtroom was filled with Terry Rawls' friends and family, many of them in tears. Terry's mother stood before the judge, pleading for justice for her daughter.
I'm Terry Rawls' mother. My daughter's supposed to graduate this year. She only needed 3 credits. She worked so hard.
By all accounts, Yolanda Snipes' daughter, Terry Rawls, was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
My daughter don't know none of them.
Snipes stood before the judge for only 30 seconds, but it was more than enough time for everyone in the courtroom to feel the depth of her pain.
I just want justice to be served for my child, please, Your Honor.
Terry L. Rawls was out late with friends in the early morning hours when they encountered trouble.
I lost a daughter behind stupidity.
Witnesses told detectives that Terry and her friends drove away from a movie theater parking lot after seeing a fight break out. During the incident, Terry was hit by a stray bullet.
Yes, a witness that actually witnessed the shooting at the movie theater came forward.
Terry's father expressed in court that he didn't believe any bond should be set for the accused.
I mean, it could happen again. I mean, just running around with guns acting crazy.
However, the evidence in the case remains unclear. Terry's mother wasn't the only grieving mother with something to say about the incident.
On the behalf of my son, I don't believe within my heart. God have not showed me that he actually was the one that shot this child. But my compassion for the family do go out towards him.
Ultimately, the judge set bond at $1 million for each suspect, Frank Bryce and Jasper Dudley. Sorry just isn't enough. A Detroit judge has issued a severe sentence to a teenager who admitted to killing a World War II veteran in cold blood. George Stewart was a teen when he murdered 91-year-old Paul inside his Detroit home. As a result of that brutal killing, he will be at least 47 years old before he sees freedom again. Stewart beat and set fire to his next-door neighbor, a World War II veteran, and now he could be 78 years old by the time he is released from prison.
No one should be able to leave this world like that. And I understand that Mr. Munchkin was a good man, and he deserved to die like he did.
And it was a brutal death. The 91-year-old was beaten to death and set on fire in his own home, a day that the victim's son can never erase from his memory.
The terrible, sickening feeling I get thinking that my dad's last hour on earth was filled with horror and pain, worse than anything he went through in the war.
Stewart pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced today to 30 to 60 years in prison. Stewart's sister maintains that her brother is not a monster.
My brother have never been in any trouble in his life. Never.
Then 17-year-old Stewart lived next door to Monchnik on the morning when the 91-year-old's body was discovered.
And I just seen the person just driving off with his car. Next thing you know, 2 minutes later, I walk in the house and we smell fire.
Evidence and surveillance video shows Stewart filling up a gas tank connected to the murder that devastated a family.
And while Dad will always be in our memory and in our thoughts and in our hearts, we have laid him to rest and we can move on with the healing process.
The Stewart family stated that there is more to the story that hasn't been disclosed, but when asked to elaborate, they declined. They believe George is innocent and mentioned their plans to appeal the conviction. Police say that Zachary Tost and George Zimmerman opened fire on a car outside an apartment complex. During the shooting, Zimmerman's brother was shot and killed.
Mr. Tost, I'm going to deny your bond.
Sir, please. Can we please just talk, sir? May we talk? Before you do that, sir. Before you do that.
A desperate plea came from Zachary Tost and his mother after a judge denied him bail. Tost and Carlos Zimmerman are both facing 4 counts of attempted murder.
It was self-defense.
Well, don't tell.
I'm not trying. He's not. I just want to go home.
Police say the incident occurred at night when Carlos stood outside Belton Woods apartments with his brother, Daniel. Zachary Tost and his accomplice opened fire on 4 people inside a car. During the shooting, Tost was shot in the arm and Daniel was killed.
His brother was murdered. They killed him in front of us.
Police say they are unsure who fired the bullets that struck Daniel or Zachary, and it remains unclear whether the shots came from their guns or someone inside the car.
We are the victims, sir. They're the victims. And this boy right here.
The judge also denied bail for Zimmerman, who sat alone in court. The teen remained mostly quiet, but became emotional when Tost spoke about Daniel.
They saw them shoot out the car, and they shot and murdered his brother after he put his 3-year-old baby to bed.
The judge gave the Tost family a stern warning before concluding the hearing.
Anything you said here that might hurt his case can be used against him, so my suggestion is to hold all this till the preliminary hearing.
Police say the investigation into the shooting is still ongoing, and no murder charges have been filed at this time. Toya Mathis, who was initially charged with assault for running over her husband, learned in court that her husband had died from his injuries, leading to her being charged with murder. The news shocked her and stunned those who knew her. Louisville Metro Police have since revisited the crime scene in the parking lot outside Incredible Dave's, as the case has now escalated to a homicide.
Everybody loved Toya. Yeah. She's a wonderful person.
Yeah. Miss Mathis, on case number 58, you're charged with assault in the first degree, domestic violence, Thaddeus Thomas, and then on case number 59, it looks like the charge has been upgraded to murder, domestic violence. Bond on both of these has been set at $500,000.
Clearly shocked, 28-year-old Toya Mathis learned in court that her husband, 31-year-old Thaddeus Thomas, had passed away, and she is now facing a murder charge. According to police, Mathis and her husband verbally argued in a parking lot on Westport Road. During the altercation, Mathis got into her Dodge Charger and intentionally struck Thomas, causing him to be thrown 5 to 10 feet into the air. Emergency crews transported him to University Hospital, where he later died.
I've been shaking ever since I heard it, because this is not her. not her. I'm a senior in the neighborhood. Toya baked me brownies, you know. It's a Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, come down and get your plate.
Neighbors say Mathis had lived in the area for 2 years after leaving a previous violent relationship. They mentioned that she and Thomas, along with her mother and son, became part of the neighborhood. Mathis is also 8 months pregnant. Her only prior record is a speeding ticket from 8 years ago.
I don't know what happened there, so I can't speak of it, but I will put my hand to Jesus to say that I know that's not Toya.
Friends of Toya Mathis say they are praying for her family, and the family of Thaddeus Thomas. Toya remains in jail at Metro Corrections with a bond set at $500,000. She is scheduled to appear back in court soon. A Cincinnati woman is being held on a $500,000 bond after allegedly running down 2 men in a Kroger parking lot, killing one of them. In a tragic twist of irony, the man who was killed wasn't even the intended target. He ran a nonprofit organization focused on promoting driver safety.
Completely innocent victim that was struck by the defendant while that victim was exiting Kroger's from his injuries. That gentleman is depicted right here on his motorcycle.
At the bond hearing for 24-year-old Tafvia Chapman, the assistant prosecutor held up a picture of the man who was killed, Scotty Griffith.
My heart is just shattered, completely shattered.
Molly B. True had dated Scotty Griffith for 5 years, and even though they broke up in 2019, they remained close. She had even texted him before the tragic incident.
I saw that he hadn't read the text, so I had like a sick feeling in my stomach all day, and when I saw his friend Bill calling me, I knew that something was wrong.
This cell phone video captures the scene. Police say Miss Chapman was arguing with another man at the Kroger in Spring Grove Village when she got into her minivan and tried to run him down. She hit the man, breaking his leg, but tragically also struck Scotty Griffith, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
She thought she hit the brake, perhaps she hit the gas, and there was no intent to harm anyone, let alone kill somebody.
Chapman's defense attorney argued for a low bond, while the prosecutor pushed for a high one, citing 2 previous cases. In 2020, she was arrested for allegedly using a hammer to break her ex-boyfriend's windows, and last year, she was arrested for allegedly abusing her daughter.
I'm here on his behalf since he can't be.
Molly spoke at the hearing, expressing her desire for justice for her friend, Scotty Griffith. He was well known in the local music and motorcycle communities, having survived a motorcycle crash and overcome paralysis. He went on to start a nonprofit called Look Twice to help others avoid being hit by cars. Molly also mentioned that Scotty had been a soundman for Aerosmith and ZZ Top and owned a well-known motorcycle shop in Newport. His life, filled with accomplishments in his 58 years, was tragically cut short in an ironic twist of fate. Tafvia Chapman is now charged with murder and 2 counts of assault. The silence in the packed courtroom was interrupted by the sound of shackles clinking around 18-year-old Jonathan Belton's waist. Emotions ran high and overflowed as Officer Mason Samborski's family addressed both the court and the young defendant.
I hope that one day you regret what you did and realize what you could have done differently. You are alive, and your family gets to see you and talk to you. We don't get to see or talk to Mason ever again. We get nothing but pain and wonderment of what our future could have been. Jonathan Belton, you shattered my happiness, my hopes, and my dreams, and for that I will never forgive you.
There were murmurs, outcries, and even one ejection when the officer's sister confronted the defendant, telling him,
Jonathan Belton, it is over. Hey! Remove him from the courtroom.
As she handed down the mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole, the judge described the case as personal and a tragedy for everyone involved. While she could not grant Jonathan's request for a private meeting with his family, she did allow him to speak to them in open court.
We know what really happened. I know what really happened. The Lord knows what really happened. I love you all to death. And I'm going to see y'all soon.
Defense attorney Jeffrey Feger was not present in court. Still, his associate indicated that their appeal will partly rely on a recent Supreme Court ruling that struck down life sentences for youthful offenders. In the meantime, Jonathan Belton is being transferred to state prison after spending 2 years in county jail. Two men will spend the rest of their lives in prison for the murder of a girl, but before the judge delivers the harsh sentence, the victim's father has a powerful message for the killers of his daughter. It was an emotional moment centered on seeking justice for little Camilla, the only kind of justice the system can provide for her. Here is her father.
I would like to say he's a real coward, because you know, just like I know who shot you, but you was too busy chasing a thought. Too busy chasing a thought, and look where it got you. Going to prison, you don't know how to fight. Ain't no guns in there, you don't know how to make no knife.
A father's understandable anger was palpable as he sat just feet away from Raphael Hearn, who prosecutors say was so intent on getting revenge against Kenneth French that he devised a plan that ultimately led to the tragic death of French's daughter, Camilla, who suffered a fatal wound to the head.
Do yourself a favor, nigga, and kill yourself. Because the world not gonna miss you. Don't nobody care about you. Don't nobody love you. Just know, when that blade penetrate that skin, cause them dudes up there waiting on you, think about me and my baby and my cousin.
Hearn was in the getaway car that day, while it was Raymond Jackson, who prosecutors say Hearn persuaded to approach Kenneth French and the children outside their Inkster apartment and open fire. Camilla was killed, and her father, Kenneth French, along with a cousin, was wounded. This incident stemmed from a conflict that had been escalating for months. Hearn had been shot 3 months earlier outside an after-hours club, and he blamed Camilla's dad, who was working security at the time, for not protecting him.
You a coward, and you is weak, and you call yourself a man, and you couldn't even take care of it yourself. You will never know how I feel. You will never know what I go through. And you have a great life as well. Thank you.
I would like to apologize. I swear I had no intention to harm Mr. French, Ms. Lancaster, or Camilla. None of this was supposed to happen. And my deepest apologies to the Gross family.
He was smiling while he was saying he apologized. So it wasn't sincere and it wasn't deep.
Jackson and Hearn each received 30 to 45 years for assault, with intent to murder against Camilla's father and cousin. However, with their first-degree murder convictions for killing Camilla, both men are facing life sentences in prison. Spencer Pearson and Madison Shemitz began dating while Shemitz was still in high school. After their relationship ended, tensions escalated when Pearson reportedly began stalking and harassing Shemitz in April 2023, as detailed in his arrest warrant. This harassment marked the start of a series of troubling events. On June 3, 2023, Madison Shemitz, her mother, Jackie Roger, and a friend, Casey Estep, were dining at Mr. Chubby's Wings in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. Their evening turned tense when they noticed Pearson at the same restaurant. Feeling uneasy, Shemitz and her mother decided to leave, quickly requesting the check to avoid any confrontation. Before they could exit, Pearson launched a violent attack. He charged at Shemitz and her multiple times. When her mother attempted to shield her, Pearson turned on Roger, stabbing her as well. A courageous bystander, Kennedy Armstrong, intervened to stop the assault, sustaining injuries to his hands in the process. According to the arrest warrant, Pearson also attempted to harm himself multiple times during the incident. Judge R. Lee Smith later emphasized the critical role Armstrong played in saving Schemitz's life, stating that without his brave actions, Pearson likely would have killed her. Spencer Pearson was arrested at the scene of the attack and faced serious charges, including 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon and 1 count of aggravated battery causing serious bodily harm with a weapon. Initially pleading not guilty, Pearson changed his plea to guilty on July 10, 2023, likely acknowledging the overwhelming evidence against him. During sentencing, Pearson's defense team attributed his violent behavior to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative brain condition linked to repeated head injuries. Pearson had played tackle football from age 6 to 18, a span during which his father estimated he endured roughly 10,000 head impacts. Neurologist Dr. Mark Rubino testified that MRI results showed Pearson had a pinched nerve or spinal cord injury that could lead to erratic behavior and depression. The defense argued that Pearson's age, lack of prior violent history, and these medical conditions warranted a sentence below the mandatory minimum. In court, it was revealed that Madison Shemitz had once intervened to help Pearson during a suicide attempt, a fact Judge R. Lee Smith emphasized in his remarks. The same person who tried to save his life, he violently attacked, the judge said, emphasizing the severity of Pearson's actions. The attack left Shemitz and her mother, Jackie Roje, with deep physical and emotional scars. Kennedy Armstrong, the Good Samaritan who intervened, sustained injuries to his hands but was widely praised as a hero for his actions, which likely saved multiple lives.
Based upon the guidelines, is 227.25 months in Florida State Prison. In analyzing the defense's motion and request for the court to downward depart, the defense has presented throughout the course of this sentencing hearing evidence and testimony that would meet the preponderance of the evidence that would permit this court to deviate and downward depart. The court does find that the defense has met its burden, showing the defendant's capacity to appreciate the criminal nature of the conduct. He does require some specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is unrelated to substance abuse or addiction or for physical disability, and the defendant is amenable to treatment. I don't know that I agree that this was an unsophisticated manner. I'm not going to find that as to that factor. And I do believe that the defendant is old enough to appreciate the consequences of the offense. So the only factor that the court does find that the defense has met is the fact that he does require some specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is unrelated to substance abuse or addiction or for physical disability. That does not, the analysis of downward departure does not stop at the defense's meeting the threshold and establishing by preponderance of the evidence that there are mitigating circumstances that would permit this court to deviate below that guideline sentence. The second prong of that analysis is whether or not the court should. June 3rd of 2023, the events that unfolded on that afternoon were horrific. This defendant launched a vicious attack on a 16-year-old girl who had done nothing but show him love, and only weeks earlier had done her part to try to save his life when he attempted suicide. The same person that tried to save his life, he violently and viciously attacked. Many folks in this courtroom have declared Kennedy Armstrong a hero. This court has no quarrel with that assessment. Kennedy Armstrong is most certainly a hero. And but for his actions and the actions of Madison's mother, this defendant would have successfully Madison Shemitz. That crime, the crime that was described and shown here today, and the result of that crime, and the impact of this crime that it has had on all three of the victims in this case, leads this court to the conclusion that any deviation below the guidelines is inappropriate. So I'm denying the defendant's motion for downward departure. I have considered the mitigating circumstances that have been well presented by the defense in this case. Mr. Kuchergis, you have done an excellent job in representing your client and providing this court with mitigation, and this court has carefully thought and weighed and considered your client's age, his lack of any prior criminal history, the fact that he was suffering from clearly a depressive state of mind when this happened, and his age. This court does not impose a sentence based on vengeance, as was mentioned, that courts are not here to sentence out of vengeance. This court has carefully thought about all of the mitigation in this case. But the crime that was committed the impact that this crime has had on Madison, Jacqueline, and Kennedy it just far outweighs any of the mitigation that this court has considered. There are just certain crimes that are committed that merit the maximum possible sentence. And this court finds that this is one of them. Spencer Pearson, you have entered a plea of guilty to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon. As to counts 1 and 3 of the information, you are adjudicated guilty. You are sentenced to serve the remainder of your life in prison. As to count 5, you are adjudicated guilty. You are sentenced to serve 30 years in Florida State Prison. All sentences are to run concurrent with each other. Madam Clerk, please reflect that he has 536 days that he has previously served and imposed the standard felony court costs. Mr. Pearson, you have 30 days to appeal the legality of this court sentence. If you wish to appeal but cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. This court is adjourned.
On November 24, 2023, the St. Johns County courtroom was tense as Spencer Pearson's sentencing hearing occurred. The defense made an emotional plea for leniency, pointing to Pearson's struggles with mental health and his diagnosis of CTE. Despite their arguments, Judge R. Lee Smith handed down a life sentence, emphasizing the seriousness of the crimes and their devastating impact on the victims. While acknowledging that Pearson had been in a depressive state, Judge Smith determined that the brutal nature of the attack left no room for leniency. There are just certain crimes that are committed that merit the maximum sentence, he stated, and this court finds that this is one of them. During the proceedings, Pearson's father addressed the court and expressed heartfelt remorse to the victims. Turning to Madison Shemitz, he said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You were so good to our family." He also thanked Kennedy Armstrong, the bystander who intervened to stop the attack, saying, "Thank you for saving multiple lives. You are a hero, and I believe you also saved my son."
I love you, Spencer.
Yes.
After the sentence was read, Pearson's mother tearfully expressed her love for him. He was allowed to hug his parents before being taken into custody. Across the courtroom, Madison Shemitz embraced her family, relieved but still processing the trauma of the attack. A woman was screaming and got kicked out of court after threatening Michelle Martins. One by one, with heads down and in shackles, the three people accused of killing Victoria Martins, Michelle Martins, Jessica Kelly, and Fabian Gonzalez entered the courtroom. They are suspects in one of New Mexico's most horrific crimes. As they spotted friends or family, there were many tears and sighs. Victoria's grandparents held hands, wearing pins that said "Forever." Victoria Martins was tragically raped and killed. Her mother, Michelle, is among the suspects. The courtroom was initially quiet, but things changed when a woman, who had been blowing kisses to a photographer, began gesturing and was removed from the courtroom.
Bye. You guys are pieces of I'm gonna get you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Baby, your stove down.
Leave the courtroom now.
After that incident, Martin's defense attorney, Gary Mitchell, requested to sit beside his client for security reasons. As the three suspects were being moved from the jury box to stand before the judge, Jessica Kelly fell, and bailiffs had to help her back up. Eventually, she stood before the judge, who ruled that all three suspects would be tried separately. The defense and prosecution requested more time due to the case's complexity. The judge stated that the first trial must begin soon, though it has not yet been decided who will be tried first. This is the tragic story of a driver under the influence whose careless behavior led to the loss of an innocent life, devastating a family and leaving them heartbroken with sorrow.
I can't even look at you because you ain't even saying nothing to us. I'm sorry. Nobody, nothing, just not even apologize because you can't even get her back.
On the morning of March 14, 2023, in Ohio, a heartbreaking accident took place when Daniel Schanneberger's vehicle collided with the car driven by Tashana Junius. Just moments earlier, Tashana had safely dropped her daughter off at preschool, ensuring she was secure before continuing with her day. Tragically, the crash ended Tashana's life, leaving her family and community overwhelmed with grief. As the case proceeded to trial, the prosecutor carefully analyzed the evidence, demonstrating how Schanneberger's reckless driving led to the tragic accident. The goal was to emphasize the seriousness of his actions, ensuring the court and public fully understood the devastating impact of his choices on that tragic day.
Because this case involves two victims, one being Christina Williams, who did suffer injuries and survived the event, but Tashana Junius, 33 years old, died as a result of the defendant's conduct that day. And I kind of want to go over the events of that day because it was Tashana, and I think you'll hear from her family members, as I've heard and have seen letters about what a special lady this was, and what a great loss she is not only to her family members, her loved ones, but to this community and to this world. And on that morning, she was doing what she did. She was taking care of her daughter, dropping her off to school, and heading to work. And I'll start out with, if I could, you can provide access to it, to the docu-cam. I'll start out with two photographs showing Tashana, which could be presented at trial. This is Tashana here, and then this is another picture of Tashana with her daughter, Melrose, who she had just dropped off at the William Lyon Learning Center on Manchester Road. And that is kind of an elementary school, and this is something she did every morning. It should also be noted that Christina Williams had just dropped off her kids at school as well. So if there's any, I guess, positive note from any of this that happened, I believe that those children were not in the car when this occurred, because it would be just moments after dropping these children off that this event occurred. To give you perspective of what was happening that morning, these are some Google Map photographs, and this first shows the perspective of coming out of the school driveway, and straight ahead is Manchester Road. So Tashana would have gone up to that light with Christina Williams and taken a left onto Manchester Road. It was at that intersection this is a close-up of that intersection here, that the light facing Manchester Road would have been red, and the defendant would have pulled up and stopped at that intersection. It just so happened that Detective Brian Reed of the Sheriff's Office, who this court has seen before as a lead detective in some of the cases that have gone to trial in this case, but he also was pulling up to that intersection as well. He would later provide a written statement indicating that he noticed kind of the unusual actions of the defendant, and that although the defendant had no cars in front of him, he didn't stop at that big solid white line where he would usually stop. In fact, stopped 4 car lengths behind him. And that immediately brought Mr. Schanneberger to the attention of Detective Reed at that time. When the light turned green, he took off, and at the school zone at that point. But as Detective Breeden put it, he said when the light cycled to green, the Ford accelerated through the school zone, traveling northbound. The Ford continued to increase speed as it approached traffic stop at the light at Manchester and Wellwood. The Ford slammed into a black Kia. The black Kia was the car in which was the driver. Without activating the brake lights, the collision ejected the driver of the Kia into the passenger side of the vehicle. And when we look again one last time at Google Map, you can see the short distance. 2370 is the address of the school, traveling northbound, and the collision occurred at 2200 Manchester Road by Google accounts. That's only 4/10 of a mile, in which the defendant went from a red light stop to accelerating through a school zone and accelerating right into the vehicle of Tashana. The investigation in this case was excellent. One of the things that the investigators were able to obtain was an airbag control module, and although the speed limit on that road was 35 miles per hour, the airbag speed module for the defendant's vehicle showed that he was traveling at a speed of 59 miles per hour. That same module showed that he never braked, not even slightly, as he collided and rammed into Tashana's car, and that he did not in any way turn the steering wheel in an attempt to avoid that vehicle.
The courtroom was filled with emotional energy as Tashana Junius's family spoke during the sentencing phase. Her mother shared a deeply moving statement describing the immense loss and the emptiness their family now faced. Her heartfelt words struck a chord with everyone present, even bringing Schanneberger to tears as he began to grasp the intense suffering his actions had inflicted.
To get a call saying that your loved one has passed, you could never understand. You could never understand that unless you've been through it. And you took that from me, from your actions. You have never took accountability for taking my daughter from me. From taking a 5-year-old mother away from her daughter. She was a nurse. She graduated from Kent State. She was a dental assistant. She was an ordained minister. She had just obtained her realtor's license. She had property. You took all that away from her. She was coming to be greater than she was already. And you took that away from her, from your actions. And it's not going to do it. You have no idea. When I told my granddaughter, she was never going to see her mom again. The cry that she had came out her mouth. It was a cry I had lived with every single day. To hear she's never going to see her mom again. She's never going to see her on St. Patrick's Day, on Valentine's Day. She's never going to get to read her a bedtime story anymore. You took that from me. I have no words to say other than you. It should have been you. It should have been you. And not her. I have no words. I have no words. Thank you. Thank you.
One by one, other family members stepped forward, delivering equally emotional and heartfelt statements. Their sorrow and anger were unmistakable as they spoke about the immense void left by the loss of a cherished daughter, mother, and loved one. Through their words, they vividly conveyed the overwhelming pain and irreparable damage Shanna Berger's actions had brought upon their family.
She was my son's godmother. My son is 15 years old. And because of you, my son is scared to drive. My son do not like to get behind the wheel. My son even want to come today because of you. You have took a lot from us. Tashana was in my wedding. Tashana had every milestone with me. We could go months without talking. And we could talk right back like we never left. It was 4 of us. It was Tashana, it was Stephanie, and when it was Brooklyn, and it was myself. You took on our closest friends. You took everything from us. Tashana was a mother. She was a great nurse. When it came to your credit, she wanted you to do everything good. And you really took everything because of your actions. And because I'm a nurse, I take care of people like you every day. And it kills me because I have to have this nurse mentality. But in reality, I really dislike you. You took a lot from us. I was working that day when I got the call that you took my best friend. I had to call and tell my son that his godmother is gone. Today is my birthday. I'm supposed to be having fun with my friend somewhere, waking up to her messages of happy birthday, Candy Girl. But you took that away. I would say that I forgive, but you have a lot more that you're gonna fight with. The rest of your life, you're gonna have to think about what you did. It's never gonna go away. No matter how many times you repent, how many times you pray, your family get to call you, your family get to talk to you. Your family get the video call, they get to visit. If you have kids, they get to see. Melrose don't have that. You get to come back home and start another life, while all of us don't have that. I have just memories of pictures, videos of her little squeaky voice. And we don't have that. I just really hope that you sit, you think about what you took. I hope that your family understand what you have done. And I hope that they're embarrassed by you. Tashana was a good person. And I just really hope that even with the max sentence, it's not gonna give her back to us. that's a lifetime. Her mother have to look at pictures. It's no longer Tashana and Butter. Like, it's no longer that. Them tears is just so irritating, but that's all. My name is Maisha Turner. Maisha Turner.
And how did you know
I'm Tashana's first niece, first everything at this point. I don't know what to say, because I never in a million years thought I'd be doing something like this. I can't even look at you because you ain't even saying nothing to us. I'm sorry. Nobody, nothing, just not even apologize because you can't even get her back. I'm so angry. It's okay. She meant the world to me. Like everything. I could call her about anything. I was with her last Saturday. And then you sit here crying like you care. You don't.
Despite the undeniable evidence of his reckless actions and the deep sorrow conveyed by the victim's family, Daniel Schanneberger pleaded for leniency during sentencing. While admitting his mistakes and expressing regret, he urged the court to show mercy by considering a lighter sentence, perhaps driven by his acknowledgement of the pain he had caused and a desire for a chance at redemption.
My name is Daniel Schanneberger. I have written this apology numerous times, struggling to find the words that express the deep remorse that I have now and forever. I have concluded that my feelings transcend far beyond anything I could possibly say. I have to confess that the time leading up to that horrific day, I wasn't living the way I should have, being selfish, making poor decisions. I wish more than anything I can go back before that day and make the necessary changes to prevent it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you can find it, not for me, but for yourself. In my pursuit to repent, I've spent a lot of time trying to learn about forgiveness. I've come to understand that forgiveness is more for the benefit of the forgiver than the forgiven. It serves to avoid becoming consumed by anger and resentment, preventing any more pain that I have already inflicted. It is a choice and not an easy one, and I struggle every day to forgive myself. I begin each day with the awareness of my past mistakes. I struggle every day to accept why it wasn't me instead. Regret over the past leads to shame, which leads to fear and anger. So I pray for God forgiveness and the strength to forgive myself. Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it does change the power it holds on the future. The goal is not to alleviate my feelings. My goal is to use those feelings as a daily reminder to focus on character transformation and building a firewall of protection against reoccurrence. I know that mercy is not something anyone deserves based on merit, but something undeserved that someone else gives by grace. Again, to say I'm sorry doesn't come close to describing how truly sorry I actually feel. I know I have done wrong and deserve to pay the penalty. I will dedicate the rest of my life to genuine repentance in effort to pay that penalty and to produce more than just a spoken apology.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon.
In cases like this, sentencing requires a careful balance between delivering justice to the victim's family and ensuring fairness to the offender. The judge, fully aware of the emotional gravity surrounding the case, took great care in deciding a punishment that appropriately reflected the severity of Shannaberger's actions while staying within the boundaries of the law. The goal was to offer to Shauna's family a sense of justice while sending a clear and firm message about the consequences of reckless behavior.
There will be no uncertainty about the verdict. There will be no long months of appeals. You have taken that part of this trauma away from them. And that's why I want them to understand that when someone does plead guilty to the maximum charges, because I want to encourage future defendants to have that desire to avoid that trauma for the family, that I generally do not give the maximum sentence on a plea. And so I want the family to understand that if that happens in part today, it's not because the court feels any less the absolute tragedy of this situation or the quality of the life that was lost, because that is not the situation. It is simply practically acknowledging that it's a good thing to have closure, and it's a good thing for someone to accept responsibility, and the court does take that into account. In fact, honestly, that is the only thing here that is preventing me from giving the absolute maximum consecutive sentences. Despite your good character, and despite your family loving you, and despite you have some record there, you do, but it's not as horrific as others. Despite all of that, that really has no effect on the court. It is the fact that you accepted responsibility is the sole reason that I'm not giving a total maximum consecutive sentence. However, I feel that what happened to Shauna was so awful and terrible and tragic and senseless. There's not enough words, as others have said, that it is appropriate for me to give you the maximum sentence on that charge. So I am going to impose, as to the aggravated vehicular homicide count 1, 8 to 12 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary. As to the aggravated vehicular assault regarding Ms. Williams, who I'm sure is going to have her own struggles and probably has her own guilt because she didn't die, and yet she's suffered a horrific loss as well. And I didn't hear her voice today, but I'm sure this has been every measure of traumatic to her physically and emotionally. I will sentence you to 2 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary, and I will run that consecutive to the 8 to 12 year sentence. On the misdemeanor, I will impose the 180-day sentence and the mandatory fine of $525. I will have to, by law, give you a mandatory lifetime license suspension as to count 1. And there's a, I think, 2 to 10 year suspension. 2 to 10 year suspension on count 2, and a 1 on count 2. I'm sorry why that's happening, but just make sure you mute everybody, I guess. 1 to 7 year suspension on count 3. Those suspensions are all going to run together. And so you have the lifetime suspension, which is a hard 15 years, meaning you can't even consider asking for any sort of privileges until after you've served 15 years of that. And there's no guarantee that it wouldn't be me, I wouldn't be the judge here at that point, but there's no guarantee that any judge would ever restore your driving privileges. Now, I personally believe life is sacred, and we've lost a life here. So this is a total loss to the community. I agree, not just his family. It's a loss to the community. But you didn't die in this accident. That tells me there's a reason you're here. And I hope that reason ends up being what the chaplain from Medina County Jail said, and that maybe you're thinking, is that you can redeem yourself. You can teach others, you can help others to avoid the seriously difficult, bad choices that you made that led you here. That's the only real good I see coming out of this. There's no other good. The only other thing I do want to comment on is that Tashana's family obviously is very loving. And so I know that they will wrap themselves around Melrose. And so I want to express my, sympathy about what's happened, but I also want to challenge you to do that. Not just for each other, but also for the girl who lost her mother.
On August 14, 2024, Judge Allison McCarty of the Summit County Common Pleas Court handed down a prison sentence of 10 to 14 years to 37-year-old Daniel Schanneberger. Alongside the prison time, Schanneberger also received a lifetime suspension of his driver's license. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.